Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's first session of TrainMoS. Today's first session is we'll discuss in today's session about risk system management and risk analysis techniques. Today's agenda includes an introduction. Then we'll discuss about the risk management system, the main phases, stages and steps of the risk management process. Afterwards, we'll present the risk management strategies and measures implemented and the risk analysis techniques, while finally we'll present some relevant conclusions. So, this presentation deals with the risk management system and risk analysis frameworks and techniques. Despite of the considerable evolution being made across many countries, industries and sectors, there are still misconceptions, misuses and ambiguities in the field of risk management. The field of risk management is faced with difficulties in defining and agreeing on principles. Risks are dealt with in different ways across different countries, industries and sectors. Terms, definitions and interpretations are as varied as the number of sources providing them. There are no agreed unified definitions of risk analysis, assessment and management, and due to this fact, there are often misconceptions. Different terms, for example, risk analysis and risk assessment, are often used interchangeably. Further, a single term may be used in various ways, meanings, or contexts. According to the Society of Risk Analysis, the term risk analysis is defined as the process that includes risk assessment, risk characterization, risk communication, risk management, and policy making, while in the European Commission's Health and Consumer Protection Directorate defines the term risk analysis as the encompassing term used to describe three major subfields of the discipline, namely risk assessment, risk management, and risk communication. Further on, the Comprehensive Risk Analysis and Management Network, which is a Swedish workshops network initiative for international cooperation among governments, academics and industries and sectors, defines risk analysis as the risk management analysis and communication techniques and tools, which consist of a systematic, logical set of actions used to classify hazards, assess risk, and implement controls to mitigate risky conditions. As we said earlier, there are many definitions about risk management. More particularly, we can see that for risk analysis, the US EPA and SEPO define it as the development of a quantitative estimate of risk based on engineering evaluation and mathematical techniques from combining estimates of incident consequences and frequencies. While for Chemical Cooperation Canada, risk analysis, the use of available information to estimate the risk to individuals or populations, property or the environment from hazards. Risk analysis generally contains the following steps: scope, definition, hazard identification, and risk estimation. While finally, for the RIVM in Netherlands, the risk analysis is the process in which the risk of a certain activity are evaluated in quantitative terms. Moving forward, again, we can see two definitions about risk assessment. With regard to Chemical Corporation, risk assessment is the process of risk analysis and risk evaluation, while for the RIVM is the process in which analyzed risk is judged for its acceptability. Finally, risk management is defined as the process of weighing policy alternatives and selecting the most appropriate regulatory action integrating the results of risk assessment with additional data on social, economic, and political concerns to reach a decision implying the following approach: identification of chemicals for consideration, risk assessment, risk evaluation, and risk mitigation or reduction. Or, according to another definition from the European Commission, risk management is a formal process for managing risks. The process consists of a system definition, hazard identification, identification of accident scenarios, quantification of probabilities and consequences. Another definition according to ACS says that defines risk management as a process which includes a range of management and policy-making activities such as agenda setting, risk reduction decision-making, program implementation, and outcome evaluation. While finally, for DNV, risk safety management is the ongoing process of controlling risk as part of the management of ship operation. It encompasses tasks such as commissioning risk assessments, making decisions about the recommendations emerging from studies, and implementing and monitoring the chosen solutions. The reasons but why these variations in terminology and definitions exist. Variations which prevail in terminology definitions, concepts as well as methodologies and practices, as seen in the table above, exist due to a range of different factors, amongst which we can distinguish, firstly, the different perceptions, attitudes and values with regard to risk in different socioeconomic political contexts, and secondly, because different requirements and specifications of diverse industrial sectors and risk specifications in various regions and countries, while an additional factor could be that difficulties exist in deciding on the principles in the field, as every country has its own priorities, local communities, central authorities, and different kinds of legislation. So, considering the above, an attempt is undertaken to provide a unified understanding of the central concepts related to risk management. So, we move to the next section, which describes the main phases, stages, and steps of the risk management system as a unified concept of the risk management process. So, firstly and most importantly, how risks can be determined. Risks are determined in terms of the likelihood that an uncontrolled event will occur and the consequences of that event occurring. In other words, risk equals the likelihood of occurrence multiplied by the consequences. The risk management system is the overall process consisting of two essential, interrelated and overlapping but conceptually distinct parts. Firstly, the risk assessment, and secondly, the risk management. In recent years, however, risk communication has become an additional integrated component of the risk management system. So, let's first define these terms. Risk assessment, which is similar to safety assessment, is an element of the system that consists of risk evaluation, risk analysis, and risk evaluation. On the one hand, risk analysis could be defined as the scientific process in which, by implementing a wide variety of methods, techniques, and tools, the risks are spotted, estimated, and illustrated in qualitative or quantitative terms. While, on the other hand, risk evaluation could be defined as the process of contrasting estimated risks with established risk evaluation criteria, for example, criteria based on available technology, legal requirements, practices, processes, or achievements, in order to determine the significance of risk and provide recommendations for the decision makers at multiple levels. While risk assessment combines both risk analysis and risk evaluation, providing practical and logical structured inputs and perspectives about risks to decision-making phases, policy development, strategies and measures for managing risks. Although risk assessment provides necessary inputs for assisting decision makers to make better, safer, and more informed decisions, it may not necessarily give away answers to many questions, such as the level of risks, trade-offs in risk control, costs and benefits. To deal with these issues, it is required to consider factors other than technical and scientific ones, such as socioeconomic priorities and perception. The figure shows the generic integrated components of the management system. As mentioned above, risk management system is a stepwise process consisting of the following interrelated but distinct phases. Risk assessment, which is composed from risk analysis and risk evaluation, and risk management. Each phase consists of several stages, steps and sub-steps that in principle are sequential. However, in many circumstances, this may not necessarily be so. Researchers in the field of risk management are often carried out on an ad hoc basis. Initiation of the process is caused by combinations of varying factors at any given time, including the seriousness of accidents, threats, issues or concerns, the availability of resources, of additional or new data, and improvements and developments of more advanced methods and tools. The circular form of the risk management model represents a dynamic model. The overall risk management process has a hierarchical structure form consisting of different levels in which the highest levels are further broken down into steps, stages, steps, and sub-steps. All processes are interactive, and changes, reevaluations, and refinements may often occur. Although in the graph the steps and the phases are shown in sequential and seamless order, starting from risk analysis, risk evaluation, and risk management, some stages and steps may be carried out and accomplished simultaneously. Skipping processes and returning to the previous ones are also possible. This is due to many factors, including the availability and accessibility of additional or new risk-related data and information, the breadth and depth of the analysis, results of the study, evaluations and redefinitions, as well as decision-making alternatives. Moving to the description of the phases and the stages of each risk management process. Beginning with risk analysis. Risk analysis is the process through which risks are examined in multiple levels, qualifying and quantifying to estimate the extent of risks, how risk components are interrelated, and which ones are the most important to deal with. The main phases of risk analysis are preparation for analysis, risk analysis process, and finally conclusions and recommendations. These integral phases of risk analysis consist of several steps, sub-steps, which are identified and further developed in the next slides. Preparations for the risk analysis process. Preparation for risk analysis consists of the following major steps, which are applied for the maritime transport chains and the movement of hazardous goods. We begin with the background, which requires to establish the particular context based on which risks of the maritime transport of dangerous goods will be analyzed and evaluated in order to allow decisions to be made. Without the context and without being aware of how the risks of dangerous goods can be weighed against other risks, it is hard to put these risks into perspective. Secondly, perform a preliminary or screening risk analysis. For example, perform a preliminary risk analysis in terms of types of marine accidents, vessels, dangerous goods, vessel traffic, operation, and geographical location. Determine who should conduct the risk analysis. Set up a team of risk analysts whose members are familiar with the maritime transport systems, risks and risk analysis methods and techniques, including other knowledgeable persons with a variety of related qualifications in the field. Identify then the stakeholder parties, the parties which are connected with risk issues and are influenced by decisions such as decisions or policymakers, ship owners, operators, employees, and many other parties interested in the maritime transport. Identify risk-generating activities. Identify such as packing, handling, discharging, stowage, and transportation with respect to transportation of dangerous goods. Identify and formulate problems. Some common issues include safety and health of employees, marine environment pollution, property damage, security, as well as economic characteristics. Set the objectives of risk analysis. The primal aim of every risk study is to provide decision makers with more information and tools. Further on, we should define the boundaries. We should define the system's physical and analytical boundaries. Then select the appropriate methods and techniques based on the amount, type, and quality of data, the time and resources available, and the legal requirements, if any. Select the appropriate tools and techniques, while finally collect relevant risk-related data and information through the identification of data sources and the collection of risk-related data. Now, moving to the second phase of risk analysis. Risk analysis varies from simple to very complex. A preliminary analysis may be conducted before a detailed risk analysis. The phase of risk analysis has the following key steps and sub-steps. The first step is the system's definition. For maritime transport system, particularly, you should define and describe the system and its interrelated activities, whose risks are to be analyzed and managed, which are the maritime transport system and the related activities. Second component of the first step is the regulatory system, which requires reviewing and evaluating the existing regulatory framework governing the maritime transport system. After the system's definition and based on risk-related data information and risk analysis techniques, you should analyze risk attributes including, and we move on to the second step, which is hazards identification, where you should define major events, including the wide range of breaches and failures of packages, or investigate transport distribution hazards, including their causes and contributing factors that have or can lead to loss of containment or involvement of dangerous goods. While we then move to the third step of risk analysis, which is exposure and consequences analysis, which includes dangerous goods and their hazards, where you should explore the list of products and hazards they present or likely to cause to the risk receptors. Dangerous goods release dispersion concentration, where you explore sequences of events following the release, dispersion, concentration and or involvement of dangerous goods that can lead to consequences for risk receptors. Modes of contacts, the routes of exposure, where you explore the ways and routes through which dangerous substances or hazards come into contact and affect the risk receptors. Dose effect assessment, where you explore and assess dose effect relationships. Risk receptors exposures, where you establish a classification of risk receptors and estimate the size of exposure of the risk receptors with regard to dangerous goods hazards. While finally, consequences analysis, where you explore the primal nature of consequences of dangerous goods hazards for risk receptors. The fourth step is the likelihood estimation and quantification, where you quantify the risk and system elements, including the quantification of risk elements, major events, hazards, causes and contributing factors to that event, exposure estimation, where you estimate the size or the extent of risk exposure of receptors to dangerous good hazards, along with the magnitude, duration, and spatial extent of the exposure, while finally the consequence of estimation, where you estimate the magnitude of the actual consequences of dangerous goods hazards to the risk receptors, including the influencing factors and conditions. Finally, in step 5, we have the risk estimation and its presentation. Risk estimation includes risk estimates by combining, firstly, the likelihood and consequences, while secondly, the consequences and exposures to dangerous good hazards. And also, then you have the risk presentation, where you present estimated risks based on risk presentation formats, including formats such as tables, graphs, diagrams, and maps. Stage 3 of the risk analysis process includes the conclusions and recommendations. This stage consists of the following key steps. Step 1, conclusions, where you combine information about the main risk elements, including hazards and their causes, and their contributing factors, frequency, probability, their consequences, and their estimated risks. While secondly, you provide recommendations. Develop a list of recommendations for enhancing risk management in maritime transport, for example. Advice on relevant research fields and questions for further future research. This brings us to the second phase of risk management, which is risk evaluation. Risk evaluation may include the following key steps. First step is to select risk evaluation criteria. In many countries and sectors, there is a wide variety of established qualitative and quantitative risk criteria or standards for evaluating various types of dangerous goods risk, including human safety and health risks, individual, public or societal risks, environmental risks and property risks. It may become an essential task to identify and decide on the related specific risk criteria for certain estimated risks in specific country or sector. Selection of risk criteria may also depend on the results of the risk analysis and how risks are estimated. Further on, in cases when aggregated risks, which are compounded risks combining human, environmental, property and other risks, are analyzed and estimated, selection of the right risk criteria for the evaluation of this type of risks are also required. Not all types of risk criteria available may serve the evaluation of aggregated risks, however. The second step in risk evaluation is to compare estimated risks against the risk criteria, which includes, in order to determine the significance levels of the estimated risks at this phase, estimated risks are compared against the selected risk evaluation criteria available for the transport of dangerous goods. Risk evaluation also employs a wide range of additional factors and procedures other than scientific and technical ones. Risk evaluation may involve different parties concerned or affected by hazards of dangerous goods, including decision or policymakers at high levels. Then, moving to the third step of risk evaluation, which is prioritizing ranking risks, which involves various types of risks. The results of risk evaluation may show that risks, human, environmental, and property risks, may have serious degrees of significance or lie on various risk regions or levels. Further, a task with a paramount importance in quantitative risk analysis is to relate risks to various systems elements, such as types of ships, types of dangerous goods related activities such as loading and discharging, classes of dangerous goods, locations of accidents, etc., while also the risk receptors, among which the crew, passengers, and stevedores. In order to prioritize risk management strategies and measures, and subsequently resources and efforts, risks are ranked according to their significance, while step 4 in the risk evaluation process is to propose risk management strategies and measures. Certain risk criteria contain principal risk management strategies and measures. At this phase, a more detailed list of strategies and measures to deal with the present level of risk can also be developed and proposed for further scrutiny, including further detailed risk analysis and cost-benefit analysis. While the third phase is the risk management, where risk management attempts to provide answers to the questions on how better deal with risks, such as what can be done when you face a risk, what alternatives are available and what are their associated trade-offs, what are the effects of current decisions on future options. The key stages and concepts of risk management, which are the key stages and steps of risk management, include to identify, analyze, and select decision-making alternatives, decision-making, planning, implementation and enforcement, while finally follow-up and monitoring of actions. The steps in risk management include stage 1, where you identify, analyze, and select decision-making alternatives, including identify main interests, identify and request involvement from major interests who will be involved in the decision-making and are affected by actions resulting from it. Risk management strategies. Identify and determine which risks are essential to deal with and what key strategic decisions must be taken to avoid or eliminate, reduce, transfer, or retain risks. Risk management measures. Options generation, where you identify existing choices for the decision makers. Identify also the factors that will influence the decisions and risk factors, as decisions are rarely based on a single factor alone. Then select the methods and tools utilized for the analysis of alternative options. Options analysis and evaluations, where in the light of the results of risk assessment and other relevant evaluation, conduct specific analysis including cost-benefit analysis and appraise weight options. Option selection, where you select and recommend appropriate alternative approaches for implementation of risk management strategies and measures, while finally, in stage 1, the residual risks includes residual risks and recommendation, where you classify residual risks and make recommendations for managing them. Moving to the second stage of risk management, which is decision making. This concerns decisions on realization of selected risk management strategies and measures. In consultations with stakeholder parties, wide alternatives are selected and decisions are made for their implementation. The decision may entail implementation of measures to minimize or eliminate unacceptable risks. When appropriate, risks are minimized, reduced, or transferred in the most cost-effective way. When they are justified, risks are retained or accepted. Stage 3 in risk management is planning. Prepare and communicate actions to deal with risks, including documentation of strategies, action goals and schedule dates, emergency response and contingency planning, transport planning, while also providing supporting information needed to implement risk management strategies and measures. Step 4 in risk management process is the implementation and enforcement, which is the implementation or execution of risk management strategies and measures, including the implementation of risk management measures for diverse risk and system components, emergency response plans and means, education and training of all persons involved, supervision, inspection, and monitoring to verify compliance with regulators, measures to enforce compliance, while also safety management audit. Stage 5 of risk management is the follow-up and the monitor actions taken. Follow up and monitor the effectiveness of scheduled actions and the constant update of all assessments as they alter due to the implementation of actions and changes in the transport network and the surrounding environment over time. The decision-making process is a central element of risk management. It is a discipline in its own right and involves identification and assessment of alternative actions for risk management, taking into account costs of action, the likelihood of future uncertain actions that may occur if the action is taken, and the rewards or costs estimated to occur. For example, in the shipping industry, decision makers in every level are continually faced with difficult decisions. A wide range of complex factors and conditions contribute to difficulties in decision-making processes. For managing risks of dangerous goods, the process involves not only considerations of technical factors, but also political, social, economic, and many other. Τώρα, τι εννοείς? Το 10.30. So, Phase 3 in the risk management process includes the following steps. We're moving to the risk communication process. Risk communication is not a phase on its own, but it's rather an integrated feature of the system. In every phase and stage of the process, communication among the parties involved are essential and important. Risk-related information that is generated at each stage should be communicated to the concerned party. Risk communication over the years has evolved as an important element of the risk management system. Its role in attitudes towards risks, risk analysis, risk evaluation and risk management have been explored in several risk communication studies. Amongst some, according to Kasperson, minor risks in quantitative terms sometimes produce intense reactions, while major risks may often be ignored. This is partly due to the risk communication approaches implemented. The public responses to the risks can be amplified or reduced depending on how the communication of the risk interacts with psychological, social, cultural and institutional processes. It is an interactive process in which exchange of information and opinions takes place among risk assessors and management and other concerned parties, including various individuals, groups and institutions interested in risk issues and methodologies. The interface among interested parties is a critical element for ensuring that the results of risk assessment can be utilized to support the decision-making process in every level. The risk communication process covers a wide range of activities directed at enhancing the knowledge about risk matters and participation in risk management. The process also includes discussions about the nature of risks, risk levels, and risk management strategies and measures. Further on, people express concerns, thoughts and reactions to risks to legal and institutional bodies responsible for risk management. The public prefers clear information regarding risks and associated uncertainties, including the nature and extent of disagreements among various experts in the field. Effective risk communication practices are among the most important tasks of industries and governments. The essential requirements of a good risk communication practices are, firstly, undertaking science translation, addressing secondly uncertainties, and finally dealing with science and policy interfaces. OECD has also been working to identify practical ways to make risk communication an integral and effective part of the chemical risk industry management process. For the transport of dangerous goods, risk communication encompasses a wide range of specific activities, including the dissemination, sharing of risk-related issues, best practices and experiences, the dissemination and sharing of relevant risk-related data and information, the dissemination and sharing again of research results concerning risk issues and methodologies, holding public hearings on risks and risk management issues, providing warnings about dangerous good hazards, while also developing public accessible databases concerning dangerous good risks. Public information about risks of dangerous goods has become a norm in many countries and industries. Risk assessment processes and outcomes are required to be open to greater participation and scrutiny by all parties concerned or affected. This in turn has required the need to help the public understand risk information and to help decision makers to understand public risk perceptions and responses. Perceptions and responses are complex, multidimensional, and diverse, as the public consists of many publics, including individuals and groups of people, which have different values and interests in risk issues and risk management. Understanding of the public concerns must be the basis for an effective risk management strategy. The OECD Guiding Document on Risk Communications for Chemical Risk Management contains guidance on design and implementation of risk communication programs. The following is a summarized list of the guidelines produced by the OECD. The first phase includes designing the strategy for a risk communication program, which requires to find a common denominator between the risk communicator and the audiences, requires to understand the socio-political and cultural context of the communication program, to consider the likely costs and resource requirements for designing a communication program, to make sure that the safe risk communication program is implemented throughout the organization and has the support of senior management, ensure that the selection of approaches to planning is well integrated and each complements the others. Do what you believe in and avoid approaches that are not convincing. Take sufficient time and financial resources to rehearse and practice the organization performance in a variety of approaches and learn from others who have become adept at them, while finally evaluate the risk communication program. The second stage includes the designing of an effective risk communication message. Be clear about intentions and make them the central message of communication efforts. Simplify your message as much as you can without being inaccurate. Place simple messages and with general information at the beginning of the text and gradually add the complex issues. Be more specific. Never assume technical knowledge about the issue unless audience is clearly a technical community. Anticipate the interests of the largest audiences and design the communication programs to match their needs. Thirdly, rules addressing specific risk issues must be analyzed through placing risk in social context and report numerical probabilities only in conjunction with verbal equivalence. Be cautious about using risk comparisons in the message. Risk comparisons should be used only for those risks that are perceived as being comparable by the public. Relate risk information to the real world of the audience. Address the qualitative characteristics that people associate with risk in information sent out. Point out the importance of exposure and dose when communicating about risks. Avoid linking the risk communication effort to a non-health related interest, while finally be sure to include all the relevant information in the risk communication portfolio. Finally, risk communication in crisis includes risk communication in crisis situation, where you should be well prepared for crisis situations and ensure that all necessary resources to communicate effectively in a crisis are at hand. Anticipate potential crisis situations and have contingency plans and materials ready before the crisis occurs. All communication must either protect people or reduce risks. Priority must be given to this over the needs of the observers to be well informed. Do not give premature explanations or statements that cannot be sustainable. Rather, report all measures undertaken to cope with a crisis. While finally, always be available to brief the media, provide a climate of confidence and competence, and make sure that the organization speaks with one voice during a crisis. Further on, moving to the reassessment phase, which is a circular process. The stage of reassessment indicates that this is a continuous and circular process. Although illustrated at the end of the cycle, the reassessment or the reanalysis can take place in any given phase or stage and at any moment. In many cases, risk assessment is carried out on an ad hoc basis. However, the system and risk associated with it require reassessment of new situations. A proactive management is to be viewed as a continuous and cyclic process because of the wide range of interrelated influential factors in situations such as the systems and the environments in which they operate, and many other influential factors and conditions that are dynamic and constantly changing. More and better risk-related data and information may become available and accessible, while an introduction or development of more advanced and better risk analysis assessment and management methods, techniques or tools. While finally, increasing demands for more frequent and thorough studies of risky activities, technologies or substances. More particularly, changes in the maritime transport system and the surrounding environment require continuous attention to identification, estimation and evaluation of new or additional risks. Alterations in the system elements, such as the regulatory system, ships, dangerous goods transportation, packaging, handling, storing and documentation of dangerous goods. With the implementation of new risk management strategies and measures, one or several system elements may also have to change. Therefore, reassessment provides feedback on the effects and effectiveness of risk management strategies and measures. Additionally, reassessment of risks allows decision makers to be informed about changing in risks in order to determine where their future efforts should be pointed at. Now we're going to make a 15-minute break and we'll be back to continue our presentation. Κάποιος πρέπει να έχει ανοιχτό το μικρόφωνο.